What I'm interested to know is, as a woman leading in a male-dominated space, how have you learned to own your own voice in space?
It's a very good question, but it's a very nuanced answer because I'm not just working in the action sports or outdoor industry or cycling, but I am working in the translation industry. And the translation industry is predominantly women operated. So all of my, studies, my career, it's always been like lots and lots and lots of women. What happens in the translation industry, funnily enough, is that once you get to the CEO level, then it's when it starts becoming men owning the space. So I really got into mountain biking last year. I really got hooked, and mountain biking literally gave me my life back. Yeah, it's been a game changer for sure.
What made you take the leap into starting the Action Sports Translator? What was the impetus? Welcome to Ride to Success, the podcast that takes you on a learning journey for more productive, creative, and active life through the power of the bike. I'm your host, Pedro Couto Lopez. You can find me on LinkedIn, link on the show notes to find out my profile on LinkedIn. And our guest is Martina Russo, the CEO of the Action Sports Translation Agency. She's also the Vice President of Protect Our Winters Italy and an unstoppable force in the world of adventure sports, language, and entrepreneurial storytelling. But what's in it for you? If you ever struggle to balance your work and well-being, if you're craving more freedom and adventure, or if you felt like the only way to make progress is to pedal through fear, this episode is for you. Because Martina shares how mountain biking gave her life back when burnout threatened to take it away. The real story behind building a business with no roadmap, just a vision and a laptop in the mountain. You'll find out about this later in the episode. And the tough but honest truth about being a female founder in an industry is still catching up. And finally, the small mental shifts that, like simply remembering to breathe, that can change your day and maybe even your life. So here's a small challenge for you. Listen to the end, commit to hearing Martina's story unfold, because it's filled with lessons on leadership, self-belief, and redefining success. I promise you'll walk away with practical insights in how to build credibility from zero, how to use your sport, be it in cycling, running, hiking, whatever it is, to reconnect with yourself, and why being the moment is not just about mastering a skill, it's mastering a life strategy. So stay tuned and let's get into it. Welcome, Martina, to Ride to Success. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. Super excited to be here and having this chat today.
Brilliant. I wanted to ask it seems a simple question, but I wanted to ask you, kind of have your take on it. Why is sports important to you?
Why sports is important to me? I mean, that's a Pandora box type question. I do not function. I do not feel like I can live a healthy, but also mentally healthy life. It's not just a physical thing, it's also healthy. And then for me, it's not just any sports, but it's specifically the sports that I get to do outdoors, including, of course, a specific discipline of cycling, which is mountain biking.
Yeah. So when you say you can't function, is it, has sports always been part of your life? Is that a way of you were expressing yourself, your identity through sports?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I am very lucky that I was born and grew up, up until I was maybe 18 years old, in Milan, so very close to the Alps. And I was very lucky that my parents took me skiing since I was very, very young, probably 3 years old. And that was always like a constant, always skied. Then moved to snowboarding, then discovered climbing, then got into mountain biking, have tried a bunch of different sports, kite surfing, terrible at it, so it's not my thing, and love hiking. I go hiking with my cats. It's just something that has literally shaped me and shaped who I was since I was like a literal child, like baby. So
I mean, it's interesting to know that and to hear your experience, because that's kind of, since an early age, 3 years old, going to the mountains skiing, kind of is a very formative experience, and I guess it kind of stayed with you. And what I'm trying to understand as well from kind of your background, have you ever performed sports at a level other than recreational, just fun?
I wouldn't say that I was ever like a pro athlete in any way. However, when I was younger, maybe around, I don't know, between 5 and 15 years old, I was doing, I think you say in English, practicing athletics, like the
Okay.
running, track,
Yeah,
the
doing
hill,
athletics, yeah.
right? So I was doing that like on a very consistent basis and going to some races. And
Okay.
I was doing that definitely through my, one of like, let's say middle schools. I don't know exactly how to explain it in English, but one of my middle school's years, throughout middle school in Italy. And yeah, but mostly it's been like my way to, just let go of all of my stress after a very hectic day. And also just adventure, push my limits. But yeah, I would say that the closest to being not such like just recreational was when I was younger for about 10 years when I was doing athletics and I was just
Athletics, yeah.
also doing races.
So, I mean, it's kind of, so I wanted to understand if there was any kind of competitiveness associated with, your enjoyment of sports. Sometimes that's often the case where you have people that have practiced sports and have taken on so many disciplines from an early age that find that competitiveness that kind of becomes part or intricate in the kind of in the fabric of going and doing a kind of a sport.
That's actually a very interesting question, and my answer might be surprising because there was an element of competitiveness when I was doing athletics, but I hated it. I didn't want to go to the races in the weekends. I absolutely hated it, which is potentially also why I've really pivoted into outdoor sports where it is me, it is the mountains, it is me, it is like I'm competing against myself and like my own limits and not like, against a bunch of other people. So yeah.
No, that's true. It's very kind of sports is personal and it's kind of allows everyone to express themselves in the way they want. And being outdoors, it even presents a even better way of kind of just being. Another kind of, as you said, helping you through releasing stress, helping you to kind of debrief the day, if you will, or from the day.
Yeah.
And you do have, you could be categorized as a high performing founder, and you enjoy staying active, healthy. But how do you balance this? How do you balance being a CEO of a global company and still pursuing multiple disciplines, being adventurous? The time I imagine is quite
Scarce.
kind of it's quite difficult to manage.
Yeah. Well, it is hard. It wasn't, I think it's been particularly hard the past few years. Before I did have a little bit more time. The past few years I've, it's just like the company is growing, has been growing a lot. So with that, the demands of the company and it's definitely been hard, but I think there's two things. One is that I work in the outdoor industry, so I am able to get away with a few things that I think a normal person wouldn't. For example, during winter, I go snowboarding. First of all, I relocate. I move every 3-4 months, even less sometimes, in order to chase the best season and the best conditions for each
Really?
sports that I do. Yeah. So right now I'm
So
in the
is that a
UK.
very nomadic lifestyle? Do you just have kind of a van that you travel throughout the year,
Yeah.
or do you have different
Yeah,
places
exactly.
located in around Europe or the world?
Yeah, so when I was younger, I lived all over the place, from South America to Southeast Asia to Eastern Europe to West, anywhere. But right now, the past few years, 6, 7 years, I've been mainly in Europe. And
Okay.
I have been, chasing the best conditions because I took up climbing pretty seriously about 8 years ago. So for some time, if
Wait,
anyone
hold
who
on.
listens,
What do you mean seriously?
seriously, meaning that if anyone who listens to this video, but also to your podcast, is a climber, they will know what I'm talking about. It's addictive. It's like an addictive sport.
Okay.
So I went to, from climbing a little bit at the gym to really like understanding what the sport is really is about. And so I was,
Okay.
I literally moved into a van with my partner at the time, and we started traveling around mostly Southern Europe to go climbing. So we were climbing all the time, all day, every day, and that kind of consumes you. But that's also, I was doing that. Then I was also snowboarding. And when I was saying earlier that I am able to do some things that most people probably won't get away with, unless you work in a specific, other industry. And then again, whether it's the cycling industry or climbing, whatever, I would take my laptop and I would make my office, I don't know, the crag or the top of the mountain or in between laps at the downhill bike park. So I am able sometimes to move things around in a way that
Okay. Right.
I can squeeze in some of the sports, but it's definitely not easy. And over time, I have become more of a weekend warrior with some of the sports because, for example, climbing does take up a lot of time. You have to go to the crag; it takes an hour. It's very involved. Biking, cycling. I know that most of your guests, and probably people who listen to this podcast probably are into road cycling or gravel cycling, most likely, and maybe like a more, I don't know, race competitive side of it. I come from a mountain biking. So it's a bit different. It's a bit of a different culture, right? But regardless, I really got into mountain biking last year. I already tried it before a few times, but last year I really got hooked. And like mountain biking and just the bike literally gave me my life back. Because
Wow.
it doesn't matter, how many hours I've worked or where I am, if there is like the conditions are good for climbing or whatever, I can just strap my lamp on the bike, my torch, get on the bike and just go out and do, I don't know, 30 kilometers. You know what I mean? So it's been a game changer for sure.
I mean, that's brilliant. It's kind of you. We're starting to kind of reveal a bit of multifaceted Martina here, which is great. That's kind of what I want to get at. And we'll talk. We'll get back to mountain biking because we do have listeners as well that are into mountain biking, all sorts of cycling.
Yeah,
really. But I wanted to kind of first frame it into the kind of the work that you're currently doing. You built Action Sport Translator. From a one-page concept into a global agency, translation agency at the moment. And you mentioned that sports has always been played a pivotal part in your journey. But what made you take the leap into starting the Action Sports Translator? What was the impetus?
So obviously, like I said, I have been in the outdoor sports scene for ever since I can remember, right? And I've also been in the translation industry for a long time. So I started off as a freelancer back in 2010. And then, over the years, I started like a translation agency for software localization, SaaS localization, which happened because, I was doing translation for a few clients, and then some of them started asking, can you help us with these additional languages? And this is how a lot of people start in agencies. So I was doing that. And then, fast forward a few years later, then this was December 2018. I was at home with recovering from a minor foot surgery. So I couldn't walk, I couldn't go climbing, couldn't snowboard. I was just like stuck at home. And I think what prompted the whole thing was that I went on to buy a pair of climbing shoes. And because I'm Italian and I also do travel a lot, I always get redirected onto these brands or retailers' websites. And I was horrified at the experience that I got into my own language. And I'm sure that you might relate, right? As a non-English native speaker, you might relate with what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's some things that quite don't
right?
read right, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So at the time, I was then I checked, and a lot of those brands, that's the biggest brands that you can think of that I had still have a crush on as a consumer that I use every day. Their multilingual content sucked. Am I allowed to say that on the
Yeah.
podcast? It was bad. It was terrible. So I thought, you know what? Let me just do something about this. I've got a bit of time now because I'm stuck at home, and there wasn't really anyone doing that in any of the other industries, right?
Really. Oh.
So I put together this like one pager, and I wanted to go basically to a trade show in the next couple of weeks. There was this big like sports trade show, and I thought I'm going to put together something real quick. I'm going to go to this trade show. I'm going to do like a proof of concept and then see what happens from there. So I did, and I
Interesting.
did, bag a client, which was great. Also, started building. Basically, I was started from scratch, right? So I had to start building credibility, authority, and yeah, so that's what prompted it, basically.
Mm-hmm. And so you kind of alluded a little bit about the kind of the critical steps. You had to proof of concept. You went to that trade show. You asked people around, look, this is what the service I'm providing. Are you interested? So I'm imagining you had received some positive feedback. Otherwise, we wouldn't be chatting today. So what, from that initial touch point of speaking directly with brands at the trade show, what were then the steps? Kind of, if you would like, give me an overview of what critical steps to get this from a piece of paper to then actually running a business, because it's quite a gap. It's not as easy as I might make it sound.
Yeah, definitely wasn't easy, but it's also not very linear. You imagine that this all happened while COVID exploded as well, right? Like all of this
Yeah.
happened. I started this new company while COVID happened. So it was definitely like a strange environment. Either way, what I set out to do was build authority, build credibility, because I want to show them that, hey, we have a team of people who are into outdoor sports themselves. They can translate. They're professional translators. They're professional, also outdoor athletes. So they cycle, they climb, they surf, whatever. So that was like the whole point. And so the first step that I took was actually reach out to a few brands that I thought, your copy sucks. We'll do something for free for you if then you give us a testimonial, or you allow us to use this as a part of our portfolio, or we are allowed to use this in somehow in our marketing materials. And so that worked really well. We did or was able to get 2-3 brands like right off. Actually, one was a climbing platform, one was a brand, and another one was also like some sort of magazine in action sports. And out of those, in the end, one of them became a long-term client. One I'm still friends with, and the other one I don't even remember what it was now. But anyway, that was like a really good strategy, because really allowed me to build that sort of like social proof, really.
Yeah, of course.
Then COVID happened, and to be honest, I was really, really busy managing my freelance clients and also my other agency, SaaS localization. At the time we had like a pretty, We were
so
working
at the time, you're still like doing this as a side job.
That was a side thing. I will be honest with you, I didn't have any grand plans for it. I thought, I'll just put it up there, see what happens. Because at the time,
were you trying to get out of some freebies, some gear from the brands that you loved, or was it?
You know what the thing is? I was just really driven by the fact that I am a consumer of these brands and of these products, and I'm having these really terrible experiences, which all of these other people just like me are having. So I would like to fix that. And so I set out to do that, but I didn't have any grand plans as to, how much am I going to grow it or what am I going to, because I was at the time, my SaaS localization agency focuses on MarTech and AdTech. And at the time we have some pretty big contracts that were really taking up all of my time. But what happened then is that the business name, which I kind of, the Action Sport Translator, I kind of picked it really randomly because I thought I need to pick something very quickly to be able to set up a website within 1 week and then go to the trade show. Really worked in my favor because somehow the SEO of that domain name was super strong. And clearly companies, other brands were looking for this service. So immediately within the first 6 months, when COVID happened as well, we started, which is also, by the way, when, the cycling industry and the other industry got a big boom, which probably explains why we grew so quickly. from the get-go. We started getting these really massive companies, finding us on Google. You can think of the biggest brands in outdoor space. They were landing into my inbox. So that was pretty crazy. And that's
Can
how
you
it
drop
started.
any names?
Yeah, I mean, some of our first clients were Salomon, O'Neill, Kamut, and then it just like snowballed from there.
Okay.
So
I mean, and so yeah, I mean, it's kind of the name. It's very very SEO friendly. Very for people that don't understand. It's like when you search on Google, you tend to search for things that in words that you would use on your day-to-day life. So people typing, okay, I need to translate this, so endurance sports or sports translation. It's a very literal kind of name. So it kind of lends itself to be searchable and easily found on Google. And obviously now at a global stage, you work with multiple verticals: cycling, climbing, sports, outdoor sports in general, endurance sports. And I'm more interested in kind of honing down around cycling, around biking. And from your experience, as the COVID boom happened, brands approaching you to expand their global reach, and the aftermath as well of that, the crisis, the boom and bust, if you will. What unique challenges or trends do you see in the cycling, on the biking communications brand across different regions and countries?
oh my God, where do we even start? So I think there is a few different topics, like macro topics here. One thing is the economics of the cycling industry, which I think you and everybody else on this podcast would be very familiar
I'm
with.
more interested in about the communication and branding aspect, because you are in this particular point where you have to work with brands to frame, to word their communications, the way they present themselves to different audiences across multiple countries, across multiple regions. So that's why that's what I'm interested. Like, what are the nuances? Is it like, the same way you can't speak in the same way to an Italian customer in the same way you speak to an American customer?
Yeah.
So there is different nuances and that's what I'm interested to find out.
Okay, great. So that's obviously also like a very big topic. So I think the first thing that we need to think about when we're talking about the cycling industry is that you might think it's a niche, but it's actually, I'm going to say it's a macro niche, right? Because you've got cycling, but then you've got road cycling, you've got gravel, you've got mountain biking. And within mountain biking, you've got downhill, enduro, you've got all of these different disciplines. And what's really important, and that's what we do and what we stand for, is that every single time that, we write a piece of copy or we translate a piece of copy, the person who is writing that piece of copy or translating that piece of copy is an expert in the subject matter because they practice it themselves. And I actually, I haven't been exposed to road cycling that much in my life. My dad actually used to road cycle a lot. He was, an instructor, whatever, but it was never really my world. And mountain biking is so different from road cycling, for example. So when you're looking at these two, different disciplines already, then you have to think, the people that we have writing for that, we have to find the right profile. And sometimes it's overlapping, but sometimes it's not. And that's like a challenge. And so that's one thing that you have to think about, the specific subculture of that specific cycling discipline, which shapes, the way that the practitioners of that discipline think, behave, talk.
Exactly. There is within cycling is a very big discipline, and then you have very sub disciplines. Mountain biking has its own lingo. Road cycling has its own lingo. It's a kind of, you have to understand or be able, not necessarily, you don't have to, correct me if I'm wrong, but you do have to have some degree of knowledge. But do you have to be fully immersed into mountain biking, let's say, to understand all of the nuances when you are, let's say, translating a piece of copy?
For us, it's a bit of a non-negotiable, to be honest, because I can tell you that
Okay.
if somebody who's never, I don't know, been slapped by a alpine trail or something, you know what I mean, like mountain biking, if you don't know the pain that causes on your arms when you're going down, how are you going to describe that feeling, or how are you going to tell that story about the product? You know what I mean? Like, you can, of course, you can put some words from one language to the other, but you're not really in understanding what does pain feel like,
Yeah.
And then you have to think about, so that's like, that's one of the aspects of it. But then, like you mentioned, you've got different cultures, and I'm talking about country-wise now. So the Italian, I don't know, consumer might be a little bit more, and I can say that because I'm Italian as well, might be a little bit more emotions driven. The Germans, they like the facts. Have you ever looked at a product review, like on Amazon, for example, and you see the Italian commentary or any other,
I have to say I haven't, but
yeah.
feel free to share.
And the Germans, like, their essays, and they go in so much detail, and it's actually really
Okay.
funny. It's a bit of a stereotype, but not really. So then you also have to think about what does that really look like when you're localizing it. And of course, you can translate, just languages, words between language and the other, but you wouldn't really understand like the essence. And so that's the main challenge of that communication, is to really bring those two aspects together. And then not only that, but what we do is very heavily, related to marketing copy, copywriting, transcreation, and a lot of the time we do product copy. And then you have this extremely technical content. A bike is made of all these different components, which are super technical by themselves, and you've got all these different brands and component brands, and it's made like all these different components. It's so technical, but you also need to be able to tell that in a way that really helps the rider envision themselves in, why am I going to buy this bike that costs 10 grand? And what is the difference between this one and that one that's, I don't know, uses a different material in the frame. Do you know what I mean? So
I can understand that. Like there is kind of a very important skill in understanding the nuances of language, and it's an interesting one because before I guess the days and before days of Google Translate and AI so readily available, you would have translations of, first, let's say, Portuguese authors. I'm originally from Portugal, into English, and you, depending on the year of the publication, you might have different translations because the person translating might have slightly different use for a word, or use and kind of word it slightly different from the original Portuguese, and that applies to any other concept. And what I'm trying to get is translation kind of an art form, in the sense that when you are translating a novel, kind of the person has to kind of really understand the native language that the novel was written in, and try to pass that on to the second language, wherever it is. And does that apply to, you mentioned the example of technical language or marketing language? Is how of a do you? Sorry, I'm kind of going in circles here, but what I'm trying to get at, is there a formula that you are able to use, or is just down to a personal criteria that you get to translate a piece of text?
So that is a bit of a complex answer to give you. First of all, you mentioned the disconnecting terminology maybe between one season to the next, right? Welcome to the marvelous world of translation management systems. We have very advanced technology, which you wouldn't know if you don't work in translation yourself, or you haven't personally, hired a translation agency. We work with tools that actually have been around for a long time, that are called TMS, or translation management system, which actually eliminates this issue. So and it basically creates a database of all the translation that you've ever done for that brand. And from season to the next, it's basically either lets you reuse some of the copy or all of the copy, or flags, hey, in this file or that season or blah, blah, whatever, you use this term as being translated that way. And actually from that, we also create glossaries and term bases, where it's that actually becomes an essential tool for all of our translators to work on the account. Also, for us specifically, we make it so we work with around 700 or 750 translators at the moment, plus some writers.
That's huge.
And we create custom teams for all the clients that we work with. So if you, Pedro, were a Portuguese translator who works with us with one of our cycling clients, we would, first of all, we have a pretty strict selection, vetting, and onboarding process. So we make sure that you are like the right fit for us. And being into cycling yourself and a professional translator is like those non-negotiables that I was mentioning. So you already know the sports themselves, right? But then once you work with us on a client, and this should be true for other translation agencies, but in practice, unfortunately, it isn't. This is something that we work really hard to make sure that this happens all the time. We form you on that specific brand terminology. So we put in place brand guidelines. We talk to the brand. What are your terms and all of that, right? So we put all of those tools in place. Where it becomes like an art form is when it's the storytelling. Where it's the trickiest part is that a lot of translators, and that's actually the number one complaint by brands, and something that I see as well as a consumer, is that the translator sticks to the original copy structure too much. So it doesn't really, which can be very difficult. So there is an art form. It takes somebody who's really skilled at this and really is able to very much rewrite the copy in a way that makes sense for the target audience, but keeping the same terminology and the brand voice.
Yeah, I mean it's well, let's say it's a world translation word. It's not something that I'm very familiar with, and that's why my curiosity of trying to find the intricacies of different ways of translating and what is involved. We might gone into a rabbit hole here, but it's just it kind of sheds a bit more light into the work that goes into translating. Because my fear is that people listening to this podcast will just say, well, you have Google Translator, you have AI, they can easily do that. But then, you might choose that option. But if you present it to a native speaker of whatever language it is, let's say Italian for this case, they might read it and they vaguely understand what they're trying to say, but you're using the wrong words or the grammar is not correct.
So we're going to get into the topic of AI now, which I think is a great topic. And AI has a role in translation, even copywriting. We use AI a lot. So, it depends. Some brands have maybe less budgets available, or maybe a specific content type calls for AI. I think AI does have a role, and we use it. We use it a lot in, I don't know, it can be product copy, FAQs, help center. There is also some instant AI translation with, customer support agents. So we definitely use it. The thing is that we work mainly with pretty big brands. And when you're working with a big brand, like, you need to think of, like, that's a corporate company. So they have so many layers, so many things going on. They've got so many departments. They've got thousands of employees. They've got so much content, and we need to use AI for that content because otherwise, it's impossible to keep up anyway. But you can't, and this is usually premium brands where their image is everything. I'm not gonna buy. As a consumer, I might not buy a 10, 15 grand bike if the copy that you present to me maybe makes no sense or there is mistakes. Something that I see all the time when I look at cycling, not all the time, but I've seen a few times when they use AI without checking. And that's like a big mistake the brands make. They think that they can click on translate with AI in their CMS tool and that's done. Like, you can use AI, but you need a strategy for it, right? And part of that is using glossaries that are put together beforehand. But sometimes I see, riders or riding shorts, and the AI, for some reason, I don't know, hallucinates and doesn't understand that, or Google Translate, which is even worse, doesn't understand that we're talking about cycling shorts, and they translate it as, for example, in Italian, and because in English, riding can be like motorbikes or cycling or even horses, right? So I have seen multiple variations of a complete, like, utter mistranslation that looks ridiculous on the brand's homepage, which is, I don't know, horse riding shorts, and then there is like a visual of somebody like road cycling or mountain biking, right? So you have to have a strategy
Okay.
when you use AI.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So we kind of, I think there is a saying that I definitely believe in, is that, AI by itself, will not steal your job, but people that are using AI will take over, because they are kind of 10 times their, improving their the production, improving their performance, and AI is just a way to make it easier, if you use it the right way. Obviously, there is equally a lot that can go wrong by using AI.
Yeah,
It's not all good.
exactly.
So I wanted now to kind of pivot slightly. You mentioned earlier on the show that mountain biking saved your life, or kind of improved your life, and that's a pretty big statement. And I want to break it down. So help me kind of understand how exactly, as mountain biking, for someone that really is into outdoors climbing. You mentioned, how has this helped you to be who you are today? Like, what has been the transformation?
So, like I mentioned earlier, I have been increasingly busy with running the company, and
Yeah.
running a company is no joke. It's like it's stressful. It is not for the faint of heart. I didn't know that I could be this, like, that stressed. It's, people management when you've got issues with people, or issues with. I am the face of the company. Anytime that there
Yeah.
is like a failure of any magnitude, like the smallest thing, I always, see it as, okay, I need to make a decision that's gonna
Of course.
impact that, whereas when it's like success, then it's a team's work. But when it's a failure, I always take it upon. I'm very
You take
critical
it
of myself.
personally.
Yeah, I'm very critical of myself. And when I'm talking about failure, it's usually this type of stuff doesn't even reach the client, but I'm talking about internal pressure, internal
Okay.
things that you need to solve, right? So it's very difficult, and it's all consuming. All you can think about is it's very difficult to yeah,
Yeah,
just to take. And I also
I can resonate with that, because it's just running your own business. You have everything falls on your shoulders, and if, you have a team of multiple people. You mentioned 700, which is, in the grand scheme of things, it's a very good, large number, but it's a lot of responsibility. And you started with this company. You might have now a board of directors. You might have like a management team in place, but it's still your baby.
exactly. So for me, and you know what, I was watching or listening to one of your episodes that you did previously, with, I forgot her name. She's Brazilian, and I think
Yeah, Renata Farah.
exactly, Renata. And I was resonating so much with what she was saying, that I remember she was talking about, how you want to separate your successes from your own worth, and this is something that I struggle so much with. And it's this year I feel like I'm finally coming to terms with, I am not the results of the company, which is, the company has been doing incredibly well, but I still tie myself to it so much. I'm very critical of myself, and it's very stressful in general. So I've been climbing for the past few years. But at some point I found that climbing was making me more stressed, because I have to plan
Oh,
the outing, which means that I have to spend the whole day out, and sometimes it's just not possible. So I'm trying to make that work. That started to become less and less of a possibility during the week, unless I
yeah,
go to the gym, which, that's a bit of a different thing. But I'm talking about outdoor climbing specifically.
yeah,
But
yeah.
then when I go to the crag, and I'm talking about sport climbing, I don't know how familiar you are with that term, but it's when
I'm
you
not. You just speak to me like I'm a 5-year-old. I don't understand what sport climbing
there
is.
you go. Climbing, you're thinking about one thing, it's actually multiple disciplines as well. So sport climbing is when you go outdoors and there is a crag, which is basically a wall of like a rock wall, and you
Yeah,
have, I don't know, anywhere between 20 and 40 meters typically of climbable wall. And
right.
there are bolts which are pre-installed in the wall. A bolt is like,
Okay.
it looks like a ring, and then you go up with a harness and a rope, and there is somebody at the ground who's belaying you, which means that is keeping you safe with the rope. So if you fall, you're gonna
They can hold you.
stop mid-air because this person is holding you from the butt. So when you go up, you put this quick draws, which are basically like carabiners. They're like hooks, and one of them is attached to your like you attach it to the wall, and then you put your rope in, and the rope is attached to your harness. Okay, that's a bit technical, but anyway. So when you do that, you are usually pushing your limits, and you're usually going, pushing your limits could be climbing on a route or on a wall, which is a very difficult, like it could be a very difficult grade, which is above your capabilities, or it could be a very difficult for you climbing style. Anyway, there's a bunch of different things that make it, you really have to be in the moment and focus, because if you don't, you're going to get slapped hard. Like the water's going to slap you. And usually the bolts or these rings where you put your safety equipment are anywhere between maybe 2 to 3 meters between one and the other.
It's quite a big fall if you miss one.
It depends. I mean, usually it's quite safe, but still, if your belayer isn't doing a good job, you could really get hurt, or there is an element of risk. It's an action sport, right? So
yeah.
And I was finding the falling, I was coming from a very stressful environment, and I was just finding that the falling was constantly making me stressed. So that was kind of like all, together. It was just like a boiling point. And then it happened that I moved to this bouldering Mecca. Do you know what bouldering is?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is like for anyone
climbing boulders.
Yeah, so this is like another climbing discipline, which is not completely different, but very different. You don't have any ropes, you don't have harness. There's like a boulder, like a bowl, like a rock, and then you climb and you've got mattresses underneath. And I moved to Spain for this for like a few months, and I was doing this, which is great. It comes with different challenges. But then the problem is that still I am working all day. And by the time that I'm done with work, I don't have enough time to go out and climb, because then, the conditions are not good enough anymore. And so I found myself like stuck in this place where there's nothing else to do. Anyone who climbs will know Albarracin is in the middle of Spain. There's literally nothing around for at least 3 hours. Like there's nothing to do except for climbing. It's a tiny village. There's nothing else to do. So I found myself, wondering what else can I do, which isn't climbing, if I don't have the time to climb during the week. And then I really was itching to go back to mountain biking, because I picked it up the previous season when I was living in Switzerland for a few months, where I also was climbing, but I picked up mountain biking. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to buy a mountain bike, because at this time we started working with quite a lot of like cycling brands, and it's very dangerous. You're reading about all these cool products and you're like, oh, this sounds really cool. I might want to, get my hands on it. Dangerous for the bank account. Terrible. So I thought, you know what? I had a very specific set of requirements in mind, and I set out to find a bike, and I bought one. And that's when it gave me my time back, because at this point I have something which is allowing me to spend the next, I don't know, every evening I can spend 2-3 hours on the bike. It's actually an e-mountain bike. I know that there is a whole, discussion about this.
No, there's no discussion here. There's no discussion on this podcast about bikes or e-bikes. It's all good.
And, we've got this massive forest in Albarracin, so I can just take my bike and spend, literally it was like pitch dark. I've got my lamp. I'm by myself in this forest. Me and the deer is just amazing. And so that really like gave me the time back. He gave me the connection with the outdoors back again, where I don't have to stress about potentially falling, injuring myself, and to push my limits. I can just go out, get on the bike, explore the forest, and just be, one with nature.
Yeah. And that's it kind of, it's a brilliant story, because it's very personal, and it speaks to, I imagine, many people that have time crunched lives, that are constantly balancing work, life, other responsibilities, and just the kind of being able to find something that gives them that outlet to forget about work for a minute and just be riding, being the present. That's quite difficult sometimes, and especially if you start having a family, children, even becomes more complex, because the responsibility is starting amounting. And you kind of mountain biking enables you to just ride without having to find as with climbing, you have to find the right conditions for it.
Exactly.
And I'm kind of interested in kind of form interested because if there is a deeper meaning, or if there is a deeper level of understanding that you got from riding a bike, because you have always been into action sports, outdoor sports, and this has somehow shaped your personality, who you are, how you lead, and how you manage your business. As riding a bike has kind of given you another perspective, or has it been the same?
So I think it's an interesting question, because I don't know if like riding per se has given me a different perspective. I feel like all the sports that I put myself into, and sometimes I'm a little bit reckless. So I feel like that's where the teaching comes from. I have, put myself into situations where I really had to learn, like, yes, I can do this. And actually, yes, probably mountain biking is the one thing that is now coming to mind when I'm thinking about all the adventures. When I am going down what I perceive as a mildly dangerous trail, or doing something which is out of my comfort zone, and I literally have to talk out loud to myself. I'm also a big chicken. I also get scared very easily. So, I do all these crazy things, but then I also get quite scared. So, I'm on the bike and I'm on this trail, which maybe there is like not a huge, not like a huge drop, but there is a bit of a drop. And I could slide for, I don't know, a few hundred meters. I could hurt myself. And I really had to talk out loud as I'm riding to myself and go like, yes, you've got this, you've got this. And I could really talk myself into really pushing myself and overcoming this fear and these limits. And the one thing that comes to mind, an adventure that comes to mind, is that I think it was last year actually, when I was in the French Pyrenees for a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I had never done like an e-mountain bike tour. I had just done, enduro and downhill bike park riding. So, but I was there and there was all these really cool trails, and I thought, okay, you know what? I was by myself. I thought, I'm just going to go and rent this bike and I'm going to go on this tour by myself. That's the first like reckless thing to do. I've never done it before in an area that you don't know, renting a bike that, you're not used to anyway. And then the next thing, which was a bit of a mistake as well.
Okay.
I ran on trail like on Wikiloc, and I followed this trail, which was like a 30 or 40 kilometers, up in the Pyrenees. So it's not like a flat bike ride the, you know what I mean? Like it's up and down the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there was an absolute disaster because the bike was, first of all, too heavy for me. I got to a point that I had to like throw it over a fence, and it was like 26 kilos. It was so heavy because it's like an e-mountain bike, full power. I had never ridden an e-mountain bike before either. So it was just like, I didn't really know how to manage the power of the bike. So I got to a point where I was at the top of this mountain. The trail turned into a technical hiking trail. It wasn't a biking trail anymore. And the weather turned when I was at the top of the mountain, and it started raining. And I think I'm going to die on this mountain because, I could hear like the thunders and stuff. And
oh, wow. Thunderstorms.
I was riding down. Once I had to basically push this bike for like 10 kilometers over like this massive uphill, like rocks. It was
10 kilometers. Whoa.
Yeah, some bits, like I could ride some bits, but it was like, basically it was supposed to be a 35 kilometers ride. It ended up being like a 45 or something. You can look it up on my Wikiloc. I've got like a review there. Look, if you want. And it was like this massive rocks that like, I couldn't even push, like I literally had to push it uphill for all this time. And instead of taking like, I don't know, 4 hours or something, it ended up taking me like 7 or 8 hours. I think it was like 7 hours, like double the time. Because it was August or July, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was summer, but it was up in the Pyrenees. So it was quite high altitude, like 2,000 some meters. So at one point it got down to like anywhere between 0 and 5 degrees. So I was just like, my battery was at 2% and I was stuck on this mountain. My phone was dying. I'm just like, okay, I need to get out of here. And I was, in this sort of adrenaline moment. I'm like, I need to basically make it out of here,
Yeah.
You don't want to be on top of a mountain when the thunders and the lightning is rolling in, right?
No, you want to quickly get out of there, find an escape route.
Exactly. So I managed to get, to a point where the bike trail ended up being again like a trail turned into a bike trail again because it reconnected to what it was supposed to be, a trail. But even before then, it wasn't actually. It was still like not really a bike trail, but I started like to ride these features. But if I had been like in my normal mind, I would have never done like big-ish drops and all sorts. So at the end of it, it's called type 2 fun, I think, where when you're in it, like what what but then you think back to it, like kind of shaped your personality a little bit. So that's the type of experiences that have been shaping me basically. Rather than, maybe where you're thinking about cycling, you think about endurance and like that sort of thing. But for me, it's more like that, putting yourself in, whether it's climbing, falling off, I don't know, your protection, or being on this like scenario when I'm cycling or biking.
I mean, that's a pretty gnarly experience. It's kind of, it could go wrong very quickly.
Yeah.
And, luckily it didn't. And I think it, but you did commit to the experience. There was not, from my perspective, there's nothing reckless about trying something new and giving it a go. I think that's brilliant of you to do. It's just sometimes the conditions didn't. Sorry,
the lack of organization was a bit reckless, to be honest. But
it is what it is. But I think kind of. And yeah, I mean, has it reframed your sense of risk, or was it that experience just was like is a one-off, and you're like, yeah, I'm glad I'm done with it.
I would like to say it was a one-off, but I find myself in this type of situations more often than I would like to admit. I think, I feel like I use up all of my brain cells to run the business, and then when it comes to organizing things like that, I mess up a bit. So but it's okay. I usually, I could have turned around when I saw that the bike trail turned into a hiking path, but I didn't. I kind of self-inflicted the pain, right? I could have turned around and gone back, but I thought surely this is going to turn into something, because I read the reviews, right? So I thought this is surely going to turn into something. But anyway, it definitely, makes me a little bit more careful next time that I do something like this, but also it does show me that, look, you managed to overcome these sort of things. And this is of course a bit of an extreme example, but when I'm riding all the time, like I said, I do get scared quite easily. I'm going down these, I don't know, ride trails or whatever at the bike park, and I'm trying increasingly bigger drops, or at the beginning I start very slow, but then I'm talking myself into you can do this, and I think that's a nice parallel with life, that sometimes I forget that I can do it. Sometimes I get crushed by the stress a little bit, and it's like, no, actually, you can do it. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's I would say that's life. You need to fall down to to learn the limits. There needs to be some kind of pushing the limits for you to understand where do I stand. Am I going to be able to do that? Am I going to do that jump? Am I going to make that business call? You need to push the boundaries. Otherwise, you are sitting on your comfort zone and nothing is happening. You're just going backwards.
Exactly.
And if you look at children growing up, they are constantly taking risks because that's how they grow. That's how they develop. Whether it is learning how to ride the bike for the first time, they don't start by knowing it. They have to learn, fall down, get up, and do it again.
Right, once in a while.
Yeah, sure.
That's how it works. You have to sometimes get through that to then get to the other side. So
exactly, yeah, and that I think that's with sports and life, but it kind of riding a bike, it presents as a brilliant metaphor to life, as in kind of you have to go sometimes through the ups and downs, crash sometimes, get up and continue riding, and the kind of the motion of pedaling keeps you moving forward, keeps you propels you forward.
Love that the way you put it.
And and I think there is something here, kind of, sometimes you can draw parallels between whether those experiences that you have riding, going climbing, and kind of your entrepreneurial journey. And I'm interested to find out if there is any parallels that you can draw, because I imagine that running a business, I can say from my experience as well that there's lots and lots of problems. You have to firefight day in day out to get things achieved, projects over the line, and you have to wear many hats on a day-to-day business. On a day-to-day basis. So, have you taken anything from endurance sports to the way you run your business today?
But I think what I just mentioned about trying to like go push your limits and get over like the stress, like it's part of the process, right? That's mainly related to my work, because in my normal like non-business life, I am not stressed. So that's mainly related to my work. And then I think I draw just like something, because what I do is not necessarily like, it's not really endurance. It's more, outdoors. And then there is mountain biking, which is also not necessarily endurance. It's not really endurance, actually. It's more outdoors, adrenaline fueled action. So it's a bit different. And so that's, I think, the main thing that I get from the bike. Then if I look at how, the climbing aspects, the climbing sports, teachings, for example, but also the bike, actually, which is be in the moment. Actually, it goes both ways. When I'm on the bike and I'm going downhill at the bike park or anything where, there's features, but especially at the bike park, if I am not present in the moment, that I don't, fully focus on what I'm doing, I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to fall down and really get hurt. And the same thing for climbing. At the moment that my mind starts to wander, then it's when, you start getting hurt on the rock. And that's, I think, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm going to get hurt in real life or in the business when I'm not focusing, but it's just like a parallel where it's a reminder for me to be present and to really focus on what I'm doing. Because for me, it's very easy to get sidetracked. I never wait for perfection. I'm somebody who gets stuff done all the time. Like I get things done. But sometimes, because I have so many things running at the same time, it's good to get a reminder of, hey, be fully present and fully focused. And that's maybe even more about actually my general life rather than just a business, because that's where I get, again, so stressed and so caught up with all the things that I'm doing that I forget to take a breath. And this is also something that when I'm climbing, especially, I remember I was climbing once and I was trying to, the expression is send a project, which means that I have been climbing the same thing for a few times and I couldn't get to the top in one go. And I was about to do it. I was struggling so much. And this friend of mine, I couldn't hear anything around me, but I remember this friend down at the bottom. She was like, Martina, remember to breathe. So, that kind of stuck with me, both in business and in personal life.
Brilliant. It's it's a simple thing, but it's kind of very powerful as well, because it speaks to the fact that you need to be in the moment. You need to be fully focused on what you're doing and not having your mind wander in 100 directions while you're trying to accomplish, whether it is climbing that or riding, or in a business perspective. It's I mean, from my experience, I find it very difficult, because I do have a mind that kind of wanders a lot, and really focusing on something for me is quite difficult, and it involves quite a lot of energy. And sometimes I'm very focused on doing something, and 1 hour later I'm really tired, and just because it just had to focus in that project or completing that task.
I think maybe the teaching, like I would say, like maybe like being in the moment for me, it's more like in, remember to be in the moment even outside of work, because I am actually I can get quite focused and, get stuff done. With my business, I just go like a train in full motion. Like but I do forget to breathe. I forget to breathe. And I think that's my teaching from climbing, especially remember to breathe. So
very good. Well, that it's it's a way to calm yourself down, or perhaps just kind of relax a little bit. And so that's a great, I guess, way to keep you focused, keep you grounded. It's also a great way to shift your mindset if you see things slipping out of your control. kind of reading maybe is a way of grounding yourself to regain the focus. And there is something that I want to touch on as well, because it's also I think of relevance to our discussion, because you are a successful CEO in the outdoor industry, and you provide you are a role model, and you have that perspective of being a CEO of a global agency. You have participated in women focused outdoor career series, and you can speak directly to the challenges and opportunities as well for women in the sports, in sports, outdoor sports, and also in the careers within the outdoors industry. And what I'm interested to know is, like, as a woman leading in a male-dominated space, how have you learned to own your own voice in space?
It's a very good question, but it's a very nuanced answer, because I'm not just working in the action sports or outdoor industry or cycling, but I am working in the translation industry. And the translation industry is predominantly women operated. So all of my, studies, my career, it's always been like lots and lots and lots of women. What happens in the translation industry, funnily enough, is that once you get to the CEO level, then it's when it starts becoming men owning the space. So it's definitely like an interesting thing. When it comes to sports, the people that we work with, they are, often whatever gender, basically. I don't know if I see a particular distinction there, but then again, we are working with marketing people, e-commerce, and I guess again, when you go up to the C level, then where you start seeing the difference. So I haven't really found it difficult to own my voice. I'm quite what's the word? Assured. I have my very own voice. I've got the opinion, my opinion on how things are, and I think I've always been able to own my voice very, very easily. It's always come very natural to me. However, what I do see, the lack of representation of women is on the day-to-day in the actual sports. So when I am on the mountain and I'm snowboarding, I'm very often the only or one of the very few women that is out there snowboarding. When I am out mountain biking, I was just in Switzerland. Was I in Switzerland? No, in France. Sorry, in France. A couple of weeks ago, I was pretty much the only woman over 3 days that I was there. I was the only woman, or maybe there was 2 more, out of 100 men that was on the trail. Why is that?
Right.
And this also translates into a lack of representation in the products. When I was gonna buy my mountain bike, I had to settle for a there was also I bought a Giant, and there was their sister brand, which is for women, which is Live.
Yeah.
But the same model wasn't as high spec as the men's one, so I ended up buying a men's one. So that's the same thing that I see across many products, product lines across. There's less choice and all of that. So that's where I see the difference. And so for me, I think it's important that, why is that? Where are the women? Why aren't there so many women in those sports? And and I think also something that I have seen that has been now growing in the outdoor sports and cycling, also specifically industry, is initiatives by women for women. So I'm sure that you know her, Rachel Burnside, I think is her last name.
Yep.
She, I think she owns this agency, which is called Shift Media, right?
She doesn't own it. She's the marketing director.
Marketing director, right? I don't know her personally, but I have followed her for a long time. And I know that she's now launched Uplift, which is a initiative, right, for women who want to get into the cycling industry, right?
Yeah, it's a mentorship program.
Mentorship. So that's one thing that's got a huge, it's being received really well. And also she's got, she's the right person to do this, because she's got the right, she's quite prominent in the industry. She worked with brands. She's got the right voice. And the same thing has happened in the outdoor industry as well. The broader outdoor industry, there is now a mentorship initiative by if I'm not mistaken, the British Outdoor Industry Association, where they've created a mentorship initiative for women who would like to get into, or already are in the outdoor industry, but create a network. And so I don't think that you can just separate one thing from the next, like the lack of representation and of products and women in the sports or the people at the companies. I think all these initiatives are really, really good and needed. And so, yeah, if anyone who's listening to this would like to get into the other industry, I think these two initiatives or the cycling industry, these two initiatives are really good, like a really good first step.
Very good. That's, I mean, I was going to ask if there was any advice, but you already gave it in one go. But I think speaking more to the fact that the truth of the matter is that there is still work to be done in terms of increasing representation, the products, and seeing more role models in the industry across different sports, and that's something that we still need to work on to make sure that there is equality, there is a level playing field, and the example that you mentioned, of in the translation world, of your experience of working alongside many other women, but when you get to C-suite, you don't see them, and that's kind of mentorship programs like Uplift is working towards getting more women to take those positions, and there are many other women in cycling as well. There are many other programs that are trying to kind of bridge that gap. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to kind of now kind of bring it back slightly to a more personal side again. It's one of the ways I run the podcast is kind of a very free form style conversations, mainly because it's kind of how my head works sometimes. It's just like ping pong from things to things. From your journey as a CEO, has there been a story, a moment in your journey founding and running Action Sports Translation that sticks with you to this day, as kind of even gives you goosebumps?
There's probably two moments of this. The first one is when we did get the first, big brand in our inbox, right. In my inbox. At the time, I only had a couple, I think one project manager. And I saw that and I was like, I cannot believe that this just happened, right? Because this is like this massive company. It's insane. Like, I was not necessarily expect a brand like that to end up in my inbox that quickly, That was...
How quickly was that? And can you name drop it?
I probably cannot name drop it, but it was within the first probably 5 months. And the thing is that I wasn't putting any effort into this. Well, it was within the first few months. I can't remember exactly which month it was, but when it happened, I was like, I wasn't doing anything with this brand. Like, I just left it there as a side hustle and I wasn't doing anything with it. So the fact that this happened and this brand found us online on Google and then emailed us, I thought, wow, this is crazy. Because, somehow this is working. And so all this small decision that I've taken up until that point somehow lead me to this moment, which was crazy. And then the other one was just the other day, because I said earlier, I find it very easy to be, my worst critic. And I think a lot of people will relate to this, but, I find it like I'm very hard on myself. And so sometimes then you get a little bit, not like stressed, but like maybe frustrated with some things that, you would like them to, I don't know, be smoother. Like, again, I'm talking about internal processes, it's the never ending struggle of anyone who runs a company. Like, there's always something to improve. So, and I was consulting on one of our translation teams on something specific to that brand. I cannot, unfortunately, name drop this brand, but it's a really, really, really big and probably one of the most loved brands in the world, and outdoor brands in the world. And
there's a few. Okay, it narrows it a bit.
Yeah, but I cannot, unfortunately, name it.
Okay.
And there was a moment where I was like, kind of caught up in my own, like, a little bit frustration, because why was this, the person who was supposed to be do this still had questions, so I'm having to spend my time doing it, and I'm taking a look, and then I'm like, wait a second, let's take a step back here. I am opening this website of this brand, which is a brand that is known in every corner of the world. Everybody loves this brand, almost everyone loves this brand. And I am consulting somebody in my team for a project they were about to deliver with this brand. Like, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, it registered that this is something that I am doing on a daily basis, that I'm working with these companies where I'm like, wait a second, what have I built? Look at what you've built. Hello. So that was just like, okay, look at what you have done over the past 6 years. It's crazy. You know, look at what you've taken this company to. So that was just like a couple of days ago. And I was like, you know what? I don't need to be frustrated. It's okay. It can be improved. It can be streamlined later. Let's just be like grateful. I'm just going to be grateful that this is my reality and that's it. So
Brilliant. Yeah, yeah, a little bit. I guess it comes back to the moment the story you shared about needing to breathe, kind of being grateful
yeah,
aligns with the breathing. Like, just take a moment, kind of take it in, just breathe for a second. Yeah,
yeah,
because a brilliant way of aligning that with the kind of real world example from your experience, and to
yeah.
kind of picture that. And I wanted now to ask this is a question I ask all of my guests, and we may have touched a little bit on it, but still remains crucial to ask. What does success look like to you?
Very good question. So I think there is multiple elements of this, which is one, I think it's being fulfilled and enjoying what you do, in
Mm-hmm.
spite of being a stressful position for me to be in, or stressful, like, to run this company, which I've mentioned like 50 times by now. But I, it is still something that I enjoy. I do love what I do. I do love working in an industry that I am so passionate about, that I breathe and live every day on, that's when I am not working, I am out either riding my bike, I am climbing, I am
Yeah,
snowboarding in winter. So it's something that it gives you that like sort of
you live it and breathe it.
baseline. Like what it's in Japanese, they have like this concept called ikigai, which is I think like, it's what success means to you, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's that sort of sweet spot of where I think it's called where you get to work on something which you love, which you are good at, and people pay you for it. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the ikigai. And I think this is my ikigai. I found my ikigai. So it is it. And then I think the next
Yeah.
component of success is also being able to, find a way to not be stressed by it. It is something that I am working on, because sometimes it's, yeah, you get, like I said, you get caught up with it. But I think success,
Mm-hmm.
part of success is to find the joy still in the stressful moments. I am mostly doing it, but sometimes I have to take a step back and find that. So for me, that's also a big part of success. And for me, this is really important. Leaving an industry, and for me, this is the translation industry, but also the other industry. So it's called, or in our case, like cycling as well. It's got two sort of heads. It's like a Medusa with two heads. Leaving my industry, which is a translation industry, in a better shape than what I found it, because I was a freelancer for a long time, and I hated what I saw. I hate the general translation industry, how agencies treat a freelancer. It's awful. So I wanted to change it and to give people, a good experience in working with an agency. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is also actually changing the experience for consumers in the outdoor industry. So yeah, that's my definition of success.
Yeah, it's. I mean, what you mentioned about this finding the kind of finding your element and something that you find joy in, something that people pay you for, and you enjoy. Sorry, I missed the element there.
You enjoy
Something that you
doing,
love,
yeah, exactly.
something that people will pay you for, and that you're good at. It's and obviously that compounded with something that gives you purpose in changing the industry for the better. I mean, you find yourself in a very in kind of a most privileged position. I mean, one, finding that niche, finding that element where you are at your best. It's not everyone can speak of that experience, and then compounding that with making active change. It's even better. So kudos to you to have like found that energy, and then kind of continue the momentum of the work you do, the joy, and the purpose you have along the way. Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. It's pretty remarkable. It's not everyone can speak of that experience, for sure.
Thank
So I'll kind of now come to the point on the podcast where every guest leaves a question to my next guest, not knowing who they are.
True.
And the question that was left for you, it's the following. What is your favorite cycling story or biking story of meeting new friends or strangers?
So wait, so the question for me is, what is my favorite story when I was on a bike and I met some new people and some friends? Is that the question?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So what's your favorite story whilst riding your bike, where you met new friends or strangers?
Question. I think it's not necessarily that I met this person new, but so we, as I mentioned earlier, we work with about 700 freelancers, 750 freelancers, and all of them do the sports, right? That they translate about. Since one of them is a Czech translator. They worked with us, been working with us for a couple of years, and she also randomly happened to be in Switzerland last year, and so we met up, and we just started. I'm gonna say ripping it down the trail, but I wasn't.
Yeah. Feel free to use that. Yeah.
For me, it was more like, it was. I think I had just started last year to like really, go down the bike park. So for me, it was really nice to be able to, meet with this translator that's part of our pool, and we're equal on the bike. It's not that I never like we don't have these like crazy hierarchies, and I don't feel like I'm superior to anyone in the business anyway. But on the bike, it's just different. Like you become friends. It kind of breaks those barriers a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And and actually she's a way better rider than I am. So, I was crashing, I was falling. She's taking a picture of me when I'm like falling over the bike. So it's actually quite funny. And I think that's probably, and then you got two women on the trail, which again, it's quite nice because usually I'm the only one, or she's the only one when she's by herself. So definitely enjoyed that when I met with her. So I had ever met her before. I met her on that trail that time.
Yeah,
then we
because
met again to go snowboarding in winter.
Yeah, because you are a remote company, so
exactly.
those moments, don't happen every day for sure. And I think what you touched on something very important as well is the fact that the bike can be a great leveler, can be a way to connect different people, different cultures, languages. You can just the joy of riding, or even kind of doing action sports together. Something that you find joy in doing together can bring people that to of opposing views of different cultures to enjoy something together in the same space.
And actually, as a follow-up to that, we have a core of 20 people, which around 15 are in production between translation. We have like basically a translation team with about 10, 12 people, I think. I'm losing track. And then we've got about 3 people at the moment in the content. We have like a separate dedicated content and copywriting unit. And so we organize a get together. Like you said, we're fully remote and everybody's kind of scattered around across Europe. So in May this year, we organized a get together in the Austrian Alps, and we took everybody mountain biking. So, we just like hired a bunch of bikes and we went all up, and it was really nice because you see, these people, they had never been all together in the same room before because we grew quite a lot in the past couple of years. So a lot of them are new, like from last year. So we put all these people together on a bike, and just like dynamic of it was just really nice. We biked all the way up to the, again, mountain bikes to the top of this kind of top of, a lake, on top of a mountain. And, then we got to the top, and we have like somebody who's a professional or certified yoga instructor. So she started doing yoga classes at the top. And just
brilliant.
like the dynamic, everybody was just clicking. And just created like a very different dynamic to, of course, when you're communicating on Slack or on a team meeting, it's different, right? So it just really brings it
very
together.
different.
So that's maybe my also another favorite moment.
Brilliant. I mean, if you can bring, now that after COVID, a lot more is done remotely, but the human connection is still very much important, because that's where you can still build the team culture, nurture relationships, and it's so much more important. If anything, COVID has highlighted that, how important it is to have that connection face to face. Kudos for organizing that. So what question would you like to ask my next guest?
It's a difficult one. Most of your guests are into road cycling, right?
It doesn't necessarily need to. You don't need to pigeonhole the question into road cycling.
Okay. Well, then
all of the guests that come on the podcast have a relationship
with
bikes,
okay.
Whatever form that is.
So I guess we can just keep it, adventurous, and ask, what was your most epic adventure on a bike?
Brilliant.
Just keep it that way.
Brilliant question. It's one of those questions that it can be a icebreaker, even at a party, at a cafe stop. A great way to get the conversation going. So thanks for sharing it. And with that, I think I wanted to conclude by saying thank you, Martina, for joining us and sharing your stories and kind of the amazing adventures you have been on, and really kind of also kind of pulling the curtain on what the world of translation is, because I came to this conversation not knowing much, and you really taught me a few things that I think are important to know. So thanks for that.
Okay, well, thank you for having me on the podcast, and watch a few of the episodes, and it's really cool. Like, lots of diverse conversation. There's always something to learn, so I'm very honored to be part of it.
Brilliant, thank you. Wow, what a journey we have just been on with Martina Russo. If this conversation got you thinking about how cycling, nature, or resilience can shape your life in ways you didn't expect, please share it with 2 friends who might need that reminder today. And hey, don't forget to follow Ride to Success on your favorite podcast platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, so you never miss another episode. But before we go, I want to leave you with these thoughts. Think about one story or insight that Martina shared today that resonated with you, and ask yourself, how can I apply that to my next ride, my next project, or just the way I show up today or tomorrow? That's what this podcast is all about, turning inspiration into motion. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay active, stay curious, and ride to success.